The sea remembers everything, even lies. April 30th, 1943. Off the southern coast of Spain, the sea is cold and quiet. A body floats face down in the surf. British uniform, briefcase chained to his wrist. Inside were letters marked, "Top Secret." But this man is not what he seems. He was never a soldier. He was never even alive. Not in the way that matters, and yet his death is about to save thousands. But to make that salvation real, they would have to do something almost unimaginable. Manufacture a believable life and then bury it at sea so well that the enemy would trust a corpse over its own eyes. This is Operation Mincemeat. In early 1943, the Allies had a problem. North Africa had fallen. Europe was next. The target was obvious. Sicily, their gateway to Italy. Churchill called it the soft underbelly of Europe. Everyone knew it, including Hitler. A frontal assault would be a bloodbath. Thousands would die on those beaches, unless Hitler could be made to look somewhere else. Two British intelligence officers sat in a dim, airless basement beneath the Admiralty. Their names were Ewan Montagu and Charles Cholmondeley. Their job, invent a lie so convincing it would fool the Führer himself, not with codes, not with fake radio chatter, with a corpse. The idea wasn't new. Years earlier, a British officer had joked in a memo, "What if we floated a dead body with fake plans toward enemy shores?" Most laughed. Montagu didn't. He saw something no one else did. Not a joke, but a weapon. They would create a man from nothing, give him a name, a rank, a life, make him so real that German intelligence would trust him, and then they would kill him, or rather, they would make the world believe he had died. But making that deception real meant solving a dozen small, deadly problems at once. They would have to invent an entire life that could pass casual inspection. A name, a rank, personal effects, love letters, the right banknote tucked into a wallet, details that read as truth. They would have to find a corpse with no family, no paper trail, no chance of being identified. They would have to make the papers look sea-soaked but legible. The ink spread just enough to be believable and not destroyed. They would have to fool Spanish doctors and clerks, neutral. Officials who might pry too deep, and German agents who were always looking for tricks. They would have to place the body where currents and chance would carry it into the hands of the right people, not into lonely sand, nor into the jaws of suspicion. The search began, not for a spy, but for a corpse. They needed someone with no family, no records, no one to ask questions. After weeks, they found him, a Welsh drifter, 34 years old, dead from rat poison. In life, no one had noticed him. In death, he would change history. They gave him a new name, Major William Martin, Royal Marines, a man who never existed, a man the Germans would believe. Then came the hardest part, making him real. They built his world with obsessive care, a used bus ticket from London, a theater stub, an overdue bill from his tailor, 2 love letters from a woman named Pam. Pam didn't exist either. She was invented by MI5 secretaries who posed for photographs and left lipstick prints on the paper to make it believable. They aged the documents, folded them, smudged the ink. Every detail mattered. One officer even carried the letters in his pocket for weeks to make them look worn. There was one problem. The man they used had died from poison, not drowning. If Spanish doctors looked too closely, the lie would collapse. They were gambling, everything on Spanish incompetence or cooperation. Montagu called it the legend of Major Martin, a man who never was, but had to seem more real than the living. Sometimes he wondered about the real person behind the uniform, but war had no time for guilt, only results. The next question was how to deliver him. They would drop him off the coast of Huelva, Spain, neutral territory, but riddled with German agents. The plan depended on Spanish officials doing what they always did, quietly pass British documents to Berlin. The documents themselves were perfect. One letter, written between 2 generals, hinted that the Allies would invade Greece and Sardinia. Sicily, just a diversion. It was bait. An it had to look accidental. The body was dressed in full uniform, the briefcase handcuffed to his wrist, then sealed in a steel canister filled with dry ice to slow decay. The label read, "Optical Instruments." One night, the canister was loaded onto HMS Seraph, a British submarine under Lieutenant Bill Jewell. His crew knew only what they needed to know. The rest was silence. For days, they sailed in darkness. Their mission was to make the world believe a dead man had drowned at sea. Just before dawn on April 30th, off the coast of Huelva, the Seraph surfaced. The sea was calm, gray with mist. Jewell gathered his men on deck. He read a short prayer. Then, slowly, they slid the body into the water. The waves swallowed him gently. For a moment, they watched. The uniform floated. The briefcase gleamed in the early light. Then the current took him. The submarine turned and slipped back into the deep. They had days, maybe a week, before decomposition made the drowning. Story impossible to believe. Everything depended on timing. For days, the ocean carried him silently, somewhere between truth and invention. They recorded the drop and radioed back a single terse log. For the crew, it was a small, secret action. For the planners, it felt like holding your breath in a thunderstorm. By morning, Spanish fishermen spotted a figure in the surf. The bait had surfaced. Spanish authorities were notified. The British vice consul, Francis Hazelden, arrived. Quickly, playing his part, he asked to see the body. He asked for the documents. The Spanish refused. Politely, Hazelden didn't push. That was the plan. The longer the Spanish held the papers, the better. German agents were already watching, bribing officials, taking photographs. Within days, copies of the documents reached Madrid, then Berlin. The Abwehr, German intelligence, studied every detail, the salt stains, the creased paper, the blurred ink. Everything looked real. When the documents reached Hitler's desk, they told him what he wanted to hear. The Allies would strike Greece, not Sicily. In London, Montague and his team waited. No phone calls, no confirmation, just silence. For weeks, they had no idea if the plan had worked. Were the movements enough? Did other intelligence contradict the story? Then, slowly, the clues came. Bletchley Park, Britain's code-breaking center, intercepted German messages. Troop movements, panzer divisions shifting east toward Greece, airfields reinforced in Sardinia. Even Rommel, the Desert Fox himself, was ordered to inspect defenses in the Peloponnese. The lie was spreading. Hitler believed. July 9th, 1943. Allied forces stormed the beaches of Sicily. German resistance was lighter than expected. In key sectors, defenses had been pulled away. The Allies broke through faster than anyone had hoped. Mincemeat had worked. A single dead man had outmaneuvered the Nazi war machine. When word reached London, Montague allowed himself a brief smile. The man who never was had done his duty. Major William Martin was buried with full military honors in Spain. His gravestone bore his false name, his false rank, and the words, "served his king and country." No one mentioned the truth. It would take decades before the secret came out. The man behind the lie wasn't a hero. He wasn't even a soldier. Modern research indicates the man was likely Glyndwr Michael, a Welsh drifter, the man who changed the war. He never lived, but his lie lived forever.